I'm 31, and last week I started feeling something was off with my wife, Emily. She's 30, we've been married 10 years, and we've got an 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, who's my whole world. Emily's been acting weird, laughing at her phone one minute, then getting quiet and taking it to the bathroom the next. I couldn't pin it down, just a gut thing, you know? I don't snoop, never have, but yesterday I woke up early to log into work and grabbed her phone off the nightstand. Unlocked it with Sophie's birthday, 14 of July, she never changed it, and opened Snapchat. What I found wrecked me. Pics of her with some guy, messages saying stuff like, "Last night was amazing," and details about meeting at a Motel 6 off the highway. A week of this, all behind my back. I felt sick, hands shaking, staring at proof she's been sleeping with someone else. She woke up an hour later, and I didn't wait. Showed her the screen, told her I want a divorce. She broke down crying, begging me to stay, following me around our house in suburban Dallas all day. Said it was a mistake, that she still loves me. I couldn't even look at her. Kept thinking about those pics, that guy's hands on her. She admitted it's some bartender, Ryan, from the cafe where she started working 3 months ago. Said it was just physical, that he gave her attention. Attention? I've spent the last 3 years pulling her out of a hole. Her anxiety got so bad she couldn't work, couldn't drive, barely helped with Sophie. I stuck by her, got her therapy, paid for meds, even helped her get that job. She started driving again 2 months ago, finally acting normal, and I thought we were past it. Now she's saying she did it because she could, like some switch flipped with her independence. It makes sense, but it doesn't hurt less. Sophie was at school, thank God, because I couldn't face her yet. She's the reason I'm still breathing. Every morning she hugs me. Every night she asks for a story. The idea of her bouncing between houses kills me. I love Emily, or loved her, I don't know anymore, but trust is gone. Those messages burned into my head, and I can't unsee them. By night, I packed a bag and left for my brother Mike's place downtown. Told Emily I need space, left a note saying I'd call about Sophie. Mike didn't ask much, just handed me a beer and let me vent. I sat there, staring at the city lights, wondering how we got here. 3 years of her panic attacks, me working extra shifts at the warehouse to cover bills, cooking dinner, driving Sophie to soccer. I got her back on her feet. And this is what I get? I'm lost, scared, and pissed. Anyone been through this? I need advice. Mike let me crash at his place for a few days, and I tried to keep busy with work. I'm a supervisor at a distribution center, so I'd go in, check inventory, answer emails, anything to not think about Emily and Sophie. I called Sophie every night on FaceTime. She'd tell me about school, her friend Mia, some art project with glitter. Her voice kept me sane. Emily texted nonstop. Apologies, promises to fix things. Pics of Sophie with captions like, "She misses you." I didn't reply. Couldn't figure out what to say. Day 3, I looked up a divorce lawyer. Found a guy, Steve Bennett, decent reviews, office near the courthouse. Met him in a plain room with a desk and too many files. Told him about the Snapchat stuff, how I want Sophie safe. He said Texas divorce takes time with a kid involved, but I've got a shot at joint custody if it goes to court. Left with papers and a pit in my stomach. Stepped up, worked doubles, handled everything. She'd sit there, zoned out, while I made mac and cheese for Sophie. Took her to doctors, got her on meds, pushed her to try driving again. 3 months ago, I got her that cafe gig. Part-time, easy, just to get her out. She came home smiling, talking about customers, some new guy training her. I thought it was progress. Laughed when she said she spilled coffee on him. Now I know that was Ryan. It wasn't just coffee. Sophie called Friday, asked me to come home for the weekend. Couldn't say no. Pulled up Saturday morning, Emily at the door, eyes puffy. Sophie ran out, hugged me, showed me a drawing of a cat with wings. Spent the day with her, kicked the ball around, grilled hot dogs. Emily hovered, said she quit the cafe, wants to work on us. I didn't respond. Felt like a stranger in my own house. That night, Sophie asleep, I sat on the couch with a beer, some dumb football game on TV. Emily tried sitting close, touched my arm. I pulled away. She went to the bedroom, and I heard her crying through the wall. Kept thinking about how I used to love her. College days at SMU, late-night Whataburger runs, her laughing at my bad jokes. Now, it's all ashes. Slept on the couch, woke up feeling like I'd aged a decade. Work was my lifeline after that. Kept my head down, avoided questions from guys at the warehouse. Emily's texts kept coming, counseling ideas, more apologies. I stayed quiet. Sophie's all I've got left to fight for, but I don't know how to do this without breaking her. Small place, cheap carpet, but close enough to pick her up. Emily kept the house for now. I didn't care. We'd sort it later. Agreed. Sophie stays with her weekdays. I get weekends. First night alone, I sat on a folding chair with a pizza, staring at blank walls, wondering how my life turned into this. Work became my escape. Long hours, extra shifts, anything to stay busy. Guys at the warehouse noticed I wasn't cracking jokes anymore, but they didn't pry. Called Sophie every night, heard about her spelling tests, her new crush on some kid named Ethan. Kept me going. Emily still texted, said she started therapy, begged me to join. I didn't answer. Didn't know who she was anymore. Picking Sophie up one afternoon, her teacher, Mrs. Carter, pulled me aside. Said Sophie's been quiet, not herself. Guilt hit hard. Took her for ice cream at Brahms, watched her smile over chocolate sprinkles, promised myself I'd keep her steady. Filed divorce papers that week. Steve sent them over, I signed, mailed them back. Emily called when she got served, crying, asking why I'm doing this. Didn't pick up. Started thinking about the last 3 years again. Her sitting on the couch, me juggling everything, believing we'd make it. That cafe job was supposed to be her fresh start, not mine ending. She'd come home talking about Ryan like he was just some coworker, and I'd nod. Happy she was happy. Now it's all I see when I close my eyes. August hit, and Sophie started 3rd grade. Took her shopping. New backpack, sneakers, pencils she'd lose in a week. Dropped her at school, watched her run to Mia, felt proud. Emily called that night. Sophie forgot her lunchbox. Could I grab it? Picked it up next day, saw Mark's car in the driveway. Didn't stop. Work ramped up. Promotion talk floated. More hours, better pay. Took it, bought Sophie a bike from my place. We'd ride to the park, her wobbling, me jogging behind. Felt like I was rebuilding, piece by piece. Bar nights turned regular. Chris, Nate, me, shooting pool, talking crap. Nate's ex remarried. He shrugged it off. Made me think I could too. Emily faded. Texts stopped. Just school stuff now. Good. Work was steady, but brutal. I'd pull 10-hour shifts at the warehouse, scanning shipments, barking at guys who slacked off. Kept my head down, didn't talk much. My buddy Chris, the forklift guy, asked once what's up. Said I looked like I hadn't slept since Thanksgiving. Told him my marriage blew up, left it at that. He nodded, offered a beer after work, but I passed. Went home instead, called Sophie. She'd ramble about recess or some science project with baking soda volcanoes, and I'd fake a smile through the phone, hiding how much I missed her every day. Emily's messages kept coming. Therapy updates, pleased to talk, pics of Sophie's drawings tagged, "She wants you home." Deleted most of them. Couldn't delete the guilt, though. Sophie's teacher mentioning her being quiet stuck with me. I'd screwed up somehow, letting this hit her. Emily's anxiety was the ghost in all this. 3 years ago, she'd unraveled. Panic attacks after Sophie's birth, quitting her job at Target, refusing to drive. I'd come home from 12-hour shifts to find her on the couch, staring at nothing, while Sophie played alone. Took her to shrinks, filled prescriptions, coached her through breathing exercises. Got her that cafe job to pull her out of it. Thought it'd rebuild her. She started driving our beat-up Ford again, smiling more, talking about coworkers. Ryan was one of them, some punk with a goatee she'd laugh about. I'd grin thinking she's back, we're good. Now I know those laughs weren't for me. She'd text him while I was microwaving leftovers, planning hookups while I thought we were healing. Independence hit her like a drug, and I was the idiot cheering her on. Joint custody, split assets, no alimony since she's working now. Sounded fair, but I didn't trust her to stick to it. Told him to push forward. Mediation was set for a Tuesday at some bland office off the 635. I took a half day from work, drove over in my truck, palms sweaty. Emily was already there, hair pulled back, looking smaller than I remembered. The mediator, a tired guy named Greg, laid out the terms. Sophie with her weekdays, me weekends, house split 50-50 once sold. Emily barely looked at me, scribbling notes, fidgeting with her pen. Said she's in therapy twice a week, wants to co-parent, right? I nodded, kept it civil for Sophie's sake, signed the papers, walked out feeling numb. Steve said it's not final till a judge stamps it, but it's close. Drove straight to work, unloaded trucks like nothing happened, but my head was spinning. 10 years with Emily, gone in an hour of paperwork. Sophie adjusted faster than I expected. She'd pack her little pink bag from my place, chattering about school like it was normal. I'd take her to the zoo, Six Flags, anywhere to see her smile. Emily kept her end, dropped Sophie off on time, didn't push me to talk. Her texts slowed down, mostly logistics now. Guess therapy's working, or she's given up. I didn't care which. Work got busier, holiday rush hit, and I volunteered for nights, crashing at 2 a.m. with sore legs and a blank mind. Kept me from thinking about her. Chris dragged me to a Cowboys game once, said I need to get out. Watched Dak Prescott throw a touchdown, drank overpriced beer, felt normal for 3 hours. First time in months. Looking back, those 3 years with Emily's anxiety were a slow bleed. She'd cry in the car if I asked her to drive, quit jobs after a week, leave dishes piled up. I'd handle it, bills, Sophie's homework, her meltdowns, thinking it's what husbands do. When she got that cafe job, I was proud. Drove her to the interview, celebrated when she got it. She'd come home with stories. Ryan spilling espresso, some lady tipping big. I'd laugh, cook dinner, think we're a team again. She was texting him then, sneaking out when I worked late. Said it was just physical, like that makes it better. Physical with a guy she barely knew, while I was planning Sophie's birthday. Independence turned her into someone I don't recognize, and I hate that I helped her get there. Christmas came, first one apart. Took Sophie to my parents' place in Fort Worth. Mom made cookies, Dad grilled brisket, Sophie tore into presents. Emily called her that night, voice shaky through the phone. Sophie said, "Love you," and handed it back, oblivious to the mess. I stayed sober, drove us home in silence, her asleep in the back seat. New Year's was lonelier. Mike had a party, but I bailed, sat with a beer watching fireworks from my balcony. Thought about Emily, wondered if she's with Ryan, didn't matter. Divorce was close, and I was done chasing ghosts. Judge signed off in February, a quick hearing I barely remember. Got the decree in the mail, joint custody, house listed, clean break. Moved to a 2-bedroom closer to work, set up a room for Sophie with bunk beds and fairy lights. She loves it, calls it her castle. Pick her up Fridays, drop her off Sundays, clockwork now. Emily's civil, waves when I pull up, keeps it about Sophie. Heard she's dating someone, not Ryan, some guy from her therapy group. Don't care enough to ask. Work steady, got a raise, started hitting the gym with Chris. Feel stronger, not just physically. Sophie's back to her old self, loud, silly, drawing cats everywhere. Mrs. Carter says she's fine now, and that's all I need. Nights alone still hit hard. Sit with a beer, think about those 3 years. Emily falling apart, me holding it together. Thought I'd failed her, but she failed us. That cafe job was her lifeline, and she used it to cut mine. Don't hate her anymore, just tired. Took Sophie to Galveston last month, first trip without Emily. Watched her chase waves, laughed when she got sand in her hair. Felt free finally. Divorce broke me, but it's building something new. Still figuring out what. Spring hit Dallas hard that year. Humid air, storms rolling in every other day. Sophie's bunk beds got a workout. She'd climb to the top and read her chapter books while I cooked spaghetti in the tiny kitchen. Our weekends were solid. Pizza nights, movies, sometimes a trip to the Dollar Tree for cheap crafts she'd turn into glittery chaos. Picking her up from Emily's was routine now. I'd pull into the driveway of our old house, still unsold, realtor sign crooked in the yard, and Sophie would barrel out, hugging me before tossing her bag in the truck. Emily'd stand at the door, wave stiffly, maybe say something about school through the window. I'd nod, keep it short. Didn't want to linger. Divorce was final, but seeing her still felt like picking a scab. Work kept me busy. Warehouse was a madhouse with spring shipments. Pallets stacked high, new guys screwing up orders. I'd stay late, double-checking manifests, muscles aching by the time I got home. Chris started dragging me to a dive bar on Fridays. I didn't have Sophie. Neon signs, sticky floors, Shiner Bock on tap. First time, I just nursed a beer. Watched some Rangers game on a blurry TV. Second time, he introduced me to a buddy, Nate, who'd been divorced too. Said his ex cheated with her yoga instructor, laughed it off like it's a rite of passage. Made me feel less alone, I guess. Didn't talk much, but it was something. Sophie's calls kept me grounded, her giggling about a dodgeball game or whining about fractions. I'd tease her, say she's smarter than me already. She was my reset button. Emily's shadow hung around, though. Found out from Mike she's still with that therapy guy. Mark, maybe? Didn't ask details, didn't want them. She'd text sometimes, stuff like Sophie needing new sneakers or a dentist appointment. Kept it businesslike. But once she slipped in, hope you're okay. Ignored it. Thought about those 3 years a lot, her anxiety locking her in, me playing fixer. She'd panic at grocery stores, cry if the phone rang, leave Sophie's toys scattered while I scrubbed dishes. I'd pushed her to that cafe job, thinking it'd save her. She'd come home buzzing about Ryan, some such story about him burning toast, and I'd grin, clueless. That buzz wasn't for me. It was her sneaking off, texting him while I crashed on the couch. Said it was attention, but it was more. She'd tasted freedom and ran with it, leaving me in the dust. House finally sold in May. Split the cash, paid off the truck. Moved Sophie's castle to a bigger place, a duplex near her school with a patch of yard. She planted sunflowers with me one weekend, dirt on her nose, laughing when I sprayed her with the hose. Felt like a win. Emily showed up once, dropping off a jacket Sophie forgot. Looked tired, said she's working full-time now, some office gig. Didn't ask about her guy, didn't care. She lingered, like she wanted to say more, but I grabbed the jacket and shut the door. Steve called later. Divorce loose ends tied up, no more paperwork. Felt final, but empty. Took Sophie to a Rangers game that weekend, her first. She cheered for the wrong team, ate too much cotton candy, fell asleep on the drive home. Best day in months. Summer rolled in, sticky and loud, cicadas screaming, Sophie out of school. Took her to my parents in Fort Worth for a week. Mom spoiled her with pancakes, Dad taught her to fish in the creek. Emily picked her up after. Said she's taking her to San Antonio for SeaWorld, kept it civil, watched Sophie hug me goodbye. Alone again, I leaned on work, picked up Saturday shifts, sweated through 90-degree days moving boxes. Chris and Nate kept the bar nights going, started opening up, told them about Snapchat, Ryan, how Emily flipped a switch. Nate said his ex did the same, traded him for Downward Dog. Chris just listened, bought the next round, didn't fix anything, but it loosened the knot in my chest. First time I laughed since it all went down. Some dumb story about Nate's dog eating his divorce papers. Sophie came back sunburned, babbling about dolphins. Said Emily's boyfriend was there, Mark, confirmed. Didn't flinch, just asked if she had fun. She did. Good enough. Emily texted later, said Sophie mentioned me a lot. Didn't reply. Kept thinking about those anxiety years. Her glued to the couch, me juggling life. I'd begged her to try. Got her that cafe job, celebrated when she drove solo. She'd talk about Ryan like he was a punchline, spilled beer, bad pickup lines. I'd nod, thinking she's mine again. She wasn't. She'd hooked up with him in that Motel 6 while I fixed Sophie's bike, planned her birthday. Just physical, didn't cut it. She'd built a wall, and I'd handed her the bricks. Hated how blind I'd been, cheering her on while she checked out. Fall crept in, cooler nights, leaves piling up. Sophie's sunflowers died, but she drew them for her room. Took her trick-or-treating, dressed as a witch, candy haul bigger than her head. Emily sent a picture of her carving pumpkins with Mark. Didn't sting like it would've. Work settled, promotion locked, running 2 shifts now. More money, less time, but I like the grind. Sophie stayed over a random Wednesday. Emily had a work thing, cooked her nuggets, watched Hocus Pocus, let her sleep in my bed. Dropped her off, saw Mark wave from the porch. Waved back, drove off. First time it didn't twist my gut. Bar crew grew. Nate brought his sister, Lauren, one night. Quiet, funny, divorced, too. We talked, swapped stories. Her ex bailed for a coworker, left her with a toddler. Clicked over beers, swapped numbers. Took Sophie to a fair next weekend. Lauren tagged along, won her a stuffed bear. Sophie liked her, asked if she's my girlfriend. Laughed it off, said maybe someday. Emily's past still lingered. Those years of her anxiety, me carrying us, her running to Ryan when she got loose. Saw it clearer now. She didn't owe me her recovery, but she owed me honesty. Didn't get it. Took Lauren to coffee later. Easy, no pressure, felt like a start. Thanksgiving at Mike's, Sophie, parents, me. Emily had her with Mark's family. Sophie FaceTimed, showed me her turkey drawing, smiled for real. Work slowed, gave me breathing room. Lauren and I hung out more. Movies, tacos, her kid and Sophie playing at the park. Didn't rush, but it worked. Emily's a memory now. House gone, divorce, dust settled. Sophie's good, I'm good. Took a year, but I'm here. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't yet subscribed, I'd really love you to go ahead and do that. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can keep abreast of all the latest real-life stories.